Hello there friends and enemies, and welcome back to Weird Deck Techs. Today we're taking a look at a deck that I've been kind of interested in for the last couple years that is a pretty interesting archetype in my opinion. Myutant. Myutant is an archetype based around kind of like an alien mutation type theme, and it mainly revolves around the gimmick of banishing your monsters to get a benefit from them later on. This generally consists of banishing monsters to get out your bigger main deck boss monsters and then ultimately fusing into a big fusion mutant at the end. Pretty simple and straightforward, so let's go ahead and take a look at my mutant deck build and see how we feel about this archetype. Here is my mutant deck, and if you haven't been here before, here's how it works. We are going to go over each card in the deck individually. I'm going to tell you what they do. We are going to plug it into Dueling Book just to show you a little bit of how this deck could work in gameplay, and then we'll talk about our thoughts on the deck. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Starting off in the main deck with 3 copies of Mutant Arsenal. Cannot be special summoned except with the effect of a mutant card. Your opponent cannot target this card with trap effects. You can only use each of the following effects of Arsenal once per turn. When your opponent activates a monster effect, quick effect, you can banish 1 card from your hand or field, then target 1 monster on the field, banish it. If this card in its owner's possession is destroyed by an opponent's card, you can target 1 of your banished mutant spells and add it to your hand. 3 copies of Mutant Mist. Cannot be special summoned except with the effect of a mutant card. Your opponent cannot target this card with spell effects. You can only use each of the following effects of Mist once per turn. When your opponent activates a trap card or effect, quick effect, you can banish 1 card from your hand or field, draw 2 cards. If this card in its owner's possession is destroyed by an opponent's card, you can target 1 of your banished mutant monsters, add it to your hand. 3 copies of Mutant Beast. Cannot be special summoned except with the effect of a mutant card. Your opponent cannot target this card with monster effects. You can only use each of the following effects of Beast once per turn. When your opponent activates a spell card or effect, quick effect, you can banish 1 card from your hand or field, negate the activation, and if you do, banish that card. If this card in its owner's possession is destroyed by an opponent's card, you can target 1 of your banished mutant traps, add it to your hand. 3 copies of Mutant GB88. During your opponent's main phase, if Mutant Evolution Lab is in your field zone, quick effect, you can special summon this card from your hand. If this card is special summoned during your opponent's turn, you can tribute this card, then banish 1 card from your hand or face-up field, special summon 1 of your level 8 mutant monsters that is banished or in your graveyard. You can only use each effect of GB88 once per turn. 3 copies of Mutant ST46. If this card is normal or special summoned, you can add 1 mutant spell trap from your deck to your hand. You contribute this card, then banish 1 card from your hand or face-up field, special summon 1 monster from your hand or deck based on the banished card. If it's a monster, Mutant Beast. If it's a spell, Mutant Mist, and if it's trap, Mutant Arsenal. You can only use each effect of ST46 once per turn. Mutant M05, 3 copies. If this card is normal or special summoned, you can add 1 mutant monster from your deck to your hand except M05. You contribute this card, then banish 1 card from your hand or face-up field, special summon 1 monster from your hand or deck based on the banished card. If it's a monster, Mutant Beast. If it's a spell, Mist, and if it's a trap, Arsenal. You can only use each effect of M05 once per turn. Lastly, for the monsters, we've got Mutant. If you control a mutant card, you can special summon this card from your hand. You contribute this card, then banish 1 mutant card from your hand or deck, special summon 1 monster from your hand or deck based on the banished card, but lose life points equal to the special summon monster's attack. If it's a monster, Beast. If it's a spell, Mist, and if it's a trap, Arsenal. You can only use each effect of Mutant once per turn. Moving on to spell and traps, we are starting off with spells with an equipped spell, Mutant Blast. Equip only to a level 8 or higher mutant monster you control. At the start of the damage step, if the equipped monster attacks an opponent's special summoned monster, you can banish that opponent's monster. While this card is equipped to a monster, you can banish this card, send the monster this card was equipped to the graveyard, and if you do, special summon 1 level 8 mutant monster with a different original attribute from your hand or deck. You can only use this effect of Blast once per turn. 3 copies of Mutant Evolution Lab, a field spell. When this card is activated, you can special summon one of your level 4 or lower mutant monsters from your hand or that is banished. Mutant monsters you control gain 100 attack for each of your banished mutant cards with different names. Once per turn, during your main phase, you can place one mutant monster from your hand on the bottom of the deck, and if you do, draw one card. You can only activate one Evolution Lab per turn. We have 3 copies of Mutant Fusion. Fusion summon one mutant fusion monster from your extra deck by banishing fusion materials listed on it from your hand or field. If your opponent has activated a card or effect this turn, you can use up to one monster each from your deck and graveyard as fusion material. You can only activate one fusion per turn. Lastly, for the spells, we got 1 copy of Emergency Teleport, a quick play spell. Is special summon one level 3 or lower psychic type monster from your hand or deck, but banish it during the end phase of the turn. This card is in here specifically just because the mutant cards do not fill out 40 cards, they reach just 39. So Emergency Teleport acts as an easy way to get out any of our level 3 or lower mutant monsters because they're all psychic types. Finishing out the main deck with traps, we've got 3 copies of Mutant Clash, a continuous trap. When you activate this card, you can target one effect monster your opponent controls, banish one mutant monster from your graveyard, and if you do, negate its effect until the end of the turn, even if this card leaves the field. When your level 8 or higher mutant monster destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can draw one card. You can only use this effect of Mutant Clash once per turn, and you can only activate one Clash per turn. 3 copies of Mutant Expansion, a continuous trap. When you activate this card, take one level 4 or lower mutant monster from your deck and either add it to your hand or special summon it. If a level 8 or higher mutant monster you control would be destroyed by card effect, you can banish this card you control instead. You can only activate one expansion per turn. And lastly, for the main deck, we've got 3 copies of Mutant Cry. During the main phase, fusion summon one mutant fusion monster from your extra deck by shuffling the fusion materials listed on it into the deck from among your cards on the field, in your graveyard, and or your face-up banished cards. You can only activate one Cry per turn. Moving on to the extra deck, we've got 3 copies of Mutant Ultimist, which requires 3 level 8 or higher mutant monsters to be summoned. When a card or effect is activated, quick effect, you can banish one mutant card from your hand, graveyard, or face-up field of the same type, meaning monster, spell, or trap, to negate the activation, and if you do, banish that card. If this fusion summoned card you control is destroyed by an opponent's card, you can add up to 3 of your banished mutant cards, up to 1 each of monster, spell, and trap, again, to your hand. You can only use each effect of Ultimus once per turn. I kind of view Ultimus as the ultimate boss monster of the deck. That's what it kind of seems like it's meant to be. Lastly, we've got 2 copies of Mutant Synthesis, which requires 2 mutant monsters with different attributes to be summoned. If this card is fusion summoned, you can target one card on the field and destroy it. When your opponent activates a card or effect, quick effect, you can activate this effect for the rest of the turn. This face-up card is unaffected by the effects of an opponent's cards with the same type, meaning monster, spell, or trap, as that card. If this fusion summoned card you control is destroyed by an opponent's card, you can add one of your banished mutant cards to your hand. You can only use each effect of Synthesis once per turn. So there we have the Mutant deck. It seems pretty straightforward. It's all about, banishing cards from your deck or, just getting your mutant cards into the banish zone as quickly as possible so you can bring out your level 8s and then presumably you can fuse into Ultimus or Synthesis, likely Ultimus. So let's go ahead and take a look at some gameplay and see how this deck might work. Alright, so here we have our first hand, which isn't that bad. We can go ahead and set all of our traps in our hand if we want to right here. Then we can go ahead and normal summon our ST46 here, which will allow us to grab our Evolution Lab from our deck. With Evolution Lab in our hand, we can go ahead and activate it, which will allow us to special summon GB88 on our opponent's turn, which will allow us in turn to banish a card to special summon one of our level 8s, but we don't have one yet. However, that's completely fine. We can do a couple of different things. We can use ST46's effect here to get out our Mutant Beast if we want, or even our Mutant Mist. And having Evolution Lab on the field is just a good idea, so we would probably want to use Mutant ST46 to get out our Beast. So we'll activate that effect to go ahead and tribute 46. We're going to banish our GB88, and we're going to go ahead and play Beast. Now that Beast is on our field, he's kind of the strongest of the mutants, specifically in current day Yu-Gi-Oh! He can't be targeted with monster effects, and he can automatically negate spell effects. Only the issue is that we don't have any cards in our hand, so we're going to be banishing cards from our field, presumably just our trap cards, which honestly, pretty fine. We've caught 2 mutant cries here, which we don't really need 2 of. We've got a mutant expansion here, which could help us out, but we'll see what happens. Mutant Beast is going to be a 2500 from our evolution lab, having 1 banished mutant monster, and ultimately I think this is just a really strong starting board. Let's go ahead and draw just to see what our next turn would have been like, and we have Mutant Blast, which is a really good pull, especially if we can keep Beast on the field for that 1 turn. So overall, I think this deck, with the way that it's built here, is relatively solid. It seems to be pulling out stuff, as far as I can see, pretty easily. So there's Myutant. How do we feel about this deck, and how do we feel about possibly changing the archetype? Ultimately, I think this deck seems pretty solid. It doesn't seem like the strongest deck, of course, but it is a deck that can get around a lot of things, such as Dimension Shifter or Forbidden Droplet or something like that. It's just a good deck for having the gimmick that it does. You know, being able to have your cards go into your banish zone and benefit you is always going to be good. I like this deck because it's pretty simplistic. I like that there's not a whole lot to it. Your ultimate goal is to get out one of these guys. I think having an extra monster that does like a contact fusion or something similarly to that could be a really good idea. Maybe have a built-in miracle fusion into the deck, but instead of it being, you know, a spell or a trap, have it be another monster. Introducing new mutants like that could be very flavorfully fun and could just make the deck work just slightly better. But other than that, I feel like I don't really have any other complaints. Of course, you can make this deck however you want. I'm sure many people have much better deck builds than I here, but as is usual on this show, I just try to keep it pure to the archetype so that we can see what the archetype is rather than seeing what the prime deck build is. That being said, that is all I have to say about mutants today. How do you feel about mutants? Have you played them before? And whether or not you have, go ahead and let me know down below your thoughts on this archetype as a whole. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found something to enjoy about today's video, and until next time, as always, drink your water.